I'm Vivian Kelly, the editor of Mumbrella in Australia, and I will be occasionally shouting at you throughout the day, apparently. I will try to keep things moving. If we do run late, the other stages will wait for you, so don't stress about that. No need to rush off early. I'd now like to introduce you to the first session, When Failure is the Industry Norm, How Do You Do Content Marketing Well? This session will be moderated by Andrea Edwards, founder and CEO at The Digital Conversationalist, who clearly has some fans. Andrea is an award-winning communications professional with more than 20 years' experience across the globe. She has been blogging for a decade and considers herself a social media evangelist and influencer. She is also chairman of the Asia Content Marketing Association, and I will now hand over to Andrea to take you through the panel.
Cool. Thank you very much. Am I working? Oh, you can hear me anyway. So, great turnout. We thought we only had about 10 people in the room, so we're pleased. The people are obviously interested in content marketing. A question for the crowd, because it is a Mumbrella event and Mumbrella can be fairly cynical about content marketing. How many cynics do we have in the room when it comes to content? Oh, that's not bad, actually. Well, maybe you guys might be nice to us today. So we're happy to be here, and I would like to ask this, the coolest panel, I think, that's going to be here at Mumbrella. If everyone could introduce themselves, talk about who you are, but also talk about the depth of experience that you have in the content marketing field, I think that would be a great place to start. Do you want to start, Yvonne?
Okay, sure. My name is Yvonne. I do marketing for Under Armour. But we are actually a distributor here for Southeast Asia. And I think in terms of content-wise, I think my perspective is slightly different from theirs. For me, I would say I have content growing out of my ears. Content, whether it's the right or wrong content, I think it's questionable. But from a marketing perspective, everybody thinks everything is content. So I get news, I get pictures, I get videos, everything thrown at me, and everybody's kind of like, hey, here's a great piece of content. Why are you not putting this up? Hey, we've got a great story here. Why are you not putting it up? So I think for me, the biggest frustration is I think trying to get people to understand what is the right content, what actually resonates with the right audience, and when to put what as well.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. My name is Alex Slight. I'm the longest title, I think, on the board here, from Vice in Australia. My background is I used to work in creative agencies many moons ago, and I always gravitated towards youth brands and digital brands and innovation in that sort of space. And I found myself at Vice 7 years ago doing content marketing. And I think the thing that gets me out of bed every morning is, the fact that through the medium of Vice or through our brand partners, we're trying to create something that is of value and make someone laugh or cry or feel something or educate them about something. And for me, that's what really drives me. The work that we do at Vice in terms of the content marketing space is twofold. We do a lot of work in partnership with brands, so we'll create documentaries or events or anything else that falls under the umbrella of content. In partnership with our media brands and distribute them on our channels. And I also operate our in-house content agency, Virtue. So we work directly with brands to create content for their channels, which is very much taking the approach of Vice and being audience first and trying to create stuff that people want to watch as well. Yeah. Are we answering the question about frustrations here?
Not yet. Next one.
Yes? Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I'm an observer for Asia looking in, but I think my observation is that I think, and my frustrations is also what really excites me about the region. I think, the content marketing industry in Asia is still very much in its infancy out here. I think the frustrations that come are because the industry is really finding its feet. And I think, from my point of view, I think there's a real risk aversion because of that, because it's unproven, and I think people aren't necessarily willing to go all in with budgets and investing behind it. And I think, from my point of view, I think content marketing is, in many regions around, and this very much happens in Australia, still happens in the States as well, is still seen as, people look at it through a campaign lens. It's a short-term solution rather than a long-term solution for brand building as well. So, I think, for me, those frustrations is also a massive opportunity. I think this region has got so much potential, and I think content marketing is really just about to take off here.
All right. And you see, you've answered all of your questions in one go, which is nice. Yeah.
Pretty much.
That was good. Nicola?
Hi there, my name's Nicola Elliott and I lead the content marketing division for BBC News called BBC Storyworks. We have a very smart and creative team out here in Asia and also in Australia. My background is that I come from a background of storytelling, directing, producing long-form programs on TV and digital. All of those TV shows and programs were originally funded by brands. So my background is really bringing together brand objectives and brand KPIs with storytelling and what audiences really want. I came to BBC to do that about 5 years ago and to build a team that is focused both across digital, TV, events, across all different types of formats from infographics to video to text, really looking at, instead of what we are creating or where we are putting it, being audience first also. Similarly to Vice, looking at having a real true voice and looking at adding value and storytelling for our audiences wherever we're telling it in the right format, in the right way that they want to consume it. And so for me, it's really bringing that place to content marketing where value is first and audience is first, and looking at, instead of making content marketing a one-fits-all solution, which I think is my biggest frustration. Similarly to Vice, the misunderstanding around the fact that content marketing is and has a real place in brand objectives, but is not a complete solution to everything you want to do. And I think that misunderstanding of what content marketing is what gives it a bad name, which is what we're all here to defend, I think.
Nice one. All right.
I'm Jackie Shorey. My background, I started at the Financial Times. I'm a financial journalist. I was there for 18 years. Then I went freelance and did lots of things. I worked for Wallpaper magazine, which is where I fell into financial journalism, but I'm really interested in chairs and lamps and things. So I went to Wallpaper, and I could only afford to do that for a year because the pay was so bad. And then I moved around and I worked on newspaper in India, in Delhi. I moved to Toronto. I did a stint here. And I think the reason that I'm here is because I then went to work in New York for a company called Brunswick, and I produced something called the Brunswick Review, which I did for 7 years, which is a magazine about communications. It was printed on paper, so at a time when print journalism was under a lot of pressure, our print run was actually going up. So we ended up printing about 30,000 of these things and sending them out to 60 countries. Someone once said to me, "Did that go to all your clients?" And I said, "If only, we wish we had 30,000 clients." But we sent it out to senior people, CEOs, comms directors. We sent it to regulators. I mean, the idea of the magazine. Now, I think, sitting here and looking back at that time, the chairman of Brunswick had a very good idea, which was to create a magazine. He just wanted a good magazine. And my brief was to do a magazine about communications, because Brunswick, if you don't know them, they're the biggest public relations. They don't like being called a public relations agency. They're a corporate communications agency, but they're really well known for doing mergers and acquisitions. And if you're doing one of those, you need to hire Brunswick, because they will help you get your deal through, or in fact defend you from the deal that you don't want to go through, and so forth. And they're also very good at handling crises. And they have lots of big clients. So he wanted a magazine about the business that they were in, which is communications business. So I could write anything, commission anything I liked, as long as it was about communications. And that was the formula for the magazine. They didn't interfere at all, my CEO and chairman. So I just had to go out, didn't have to write about clients, and I had to write something interesting. So, and when we interviewed people, we didn't make it bland, because he knew that this thing would just be tossed if it wasn't a proper objective magazine. And that, I think, was the heart of, now I realise, looking back, was at the heart of good content. It had to stand alone. It wasn't just trying to flog Brunswick services, but it wanted to let people know what we had to say and what we could tell them about the world that they were in, the world that we were all in, around communicating issues. Now I'm in Singapore, working for an agency called Click to View. We're a content agency, and we do everything that you might like, and we often have ideas about how we can help our clients to tell their story, and that might be through video, it might be through written content, podcasts, infographics, and because it's often the same thing, and we'll come up with imaginative ways of helping you to tell your story. So that's, a bit of background.
Yeah. And that magazine, The Riches Are in the Niches, right? So it was very niche, targeting senior communications professionals. So
Yes.
it works when it's focused. Yeah.
Yes.
David?
Hi everyone, my name is David Nemes. I'm the VP of Brand Strategy for Australia and APAC at BuzzFeed. Prior to BuzzFeed, I spent 5.5 years at LinkedIn. So spent quite a lot of time from the B2B in content marketing and now very much in that B2C world. And you know, BuzzFeed at the core of everything we do is around creating human connection and fostering that human connection. So we're publishing around 700 pieces of content every single day. 600 to 700 pieces of content every single day, and we're able to work with brands who really want to connect with that millennial audience, really similar to the guys at Vice, and just really passionate about how we can add value to our audience and help brands add value to that audience as well.
Yeah. All right, well, so do you want to start with the next question? What's the number one, and Alex, you might have to come up with another one, right? But
I thought
I'm
we
sure
were
you've got a
answering
few.
it. I thought we were answering it before. Sorry, you
I'm
can
sure
skip me.
I'm sure you've got a few
It's
more
long.
to add. But when you think about content marketing and how it's sort of rolling out in Asia, and you know the people who are cynical are very smart people, what is it? What's going wrong? What frustrates you about content marketing?
I mean, it's not so much what frustrates. I think it's similar to what Alex was saying. I think at the moment, in Asia and Australia as well, there's that theory that it's, you can just sort of jump in for a campaign.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, sometimes that can work, but I think, understanding, that it is going to be a longer term investment. But I think even taking a step back, content marketing can be seen as a shiny new toy, even though it's been around for decades. And really understanding why you want to create content, what are your longer term objectives, and being true to that, and working out, is content the right way to do that? And if it is, really have to go all in.
Yeah.
But I think, this sort of short-termism, it's not something that's going to be, it's not a direct response, very short-term kind of thing. So probably that proving the value out, and that's up to us to do, right? Like we have to prove the value in the long term of content marketing. So it's a bit of a chicken and egg. So I think that's a bit of the frustration.
I would say humans aren't campaigns.
Yeah.
And that's what needs to shift. You want to, Jackie, Nicola? Do you want to?
I think, for us as well, it's really around looking at content marketing in a position in that funnel. So as I was saying, for us, it's really about looking at understanding that it achieves certain objectives or what objectives you are looking to achieve with that content marketing, and not forgetting that all the other elements of your marketing funnel need to sit in and around it to be able to produce something that is actionable to your consumer at the end of the day, and looking at what that long-term objective is and how it ties in with the rest of your plan, not expecting it to achieve everything as a standalone product. While it can stand alone and have value of itself, actionable results need to come with a plan of activation around that content as well as just the content itself.
Yeah, cool. Yvonne, do you want to?
I think for content marketing, I think it cuts across both, I think, B2B and B2C. It's something that is pretty much building brand love, if I put it that way. So, I mean, like you were talking just now, in the B2B world, I mean, your customers are also consumers as well. Yeah. So how do you actually deliver the right content in the right format, and also, it's also in what channels? I mean, before this, I came from Reader's Digest. I think most of you in this crowd would have read Reader's Digest. And, they had awesome content. But the reason why it is what it is today is also, despite the fact that you have great content, but it's how do you actually deliver that content. The long-form content didn't work for the audience that they were trying to talk to. It still resonates hard in the older age people, I would say. The 55, 60 years old, they still want long-form content. But when it came down to the 18, 20 years old, each Reader's Digest article is like 6 pages long. Nobody wanted to read a 6-page article. So it's just about how you deliver it, how you snap it out, and where do you deliver it to. I think that's what's important. And I think most of us, most of the time, don't have that bandwidth as a marketer to try and be given that luxury of time. Most of the time, we're chasing after sales dollars. They want you to do content, and they want an ROI straight away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they patient?
Generally, no.
Yeah. Patience is a big part of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I give an example
Yeah.
of something frustrating? So I've only been here for a couple of months, so I couldn't make any generalizations about here, but this is universal. And it's the idea that you hear a lot with content marketing, which is thought leadership, which I find it very hard even to say those words, because anyone who's in this world knows that it's a bit of a cliche and everyone wants to be a thought leader. Well, my feeling about that is be careful what you wish for. So we had a client who wanted to be a thought leader. They said, we want 3 articles that will position us as a thought leader. So we said, great. So first of all, as you know, you actually need to have some thoughts and really know what. And that may sound stupid, but you need a position. You need to have a strong position, because it's like an editorial in a newspaper. Here's the status quo, here's what's wrong, and here's how I think we're going to fix it. 700, 800 words, job done, powerful, very effective, newspapers run on them. You know, it's a kind of very well-tried formula for getting a strong point of view across, but you do need a point of view. Well, great, because we're very good at talking to clients and just trying to figure out what they have to say, because they know an awful lot of stuff and they need to edit it down into one strong thing. They often want to say 10 things, so you want to get that down. So in this example I'm going to give you, we found out what they wanted to say, roughly, found an amazing freelance in their world who knew their world inside out, put the two together. It was brilliant. This freelance went off and wrote 3 incredible articles. And you know, if you're me, someone like me, you get it in and you can't really change anything. It's all there, it's in the right order, just a bit of, light editing, really exciting. Send it off to the client. And their immediate reaction was, oh my God, this is amazing. Oh, wow, yeah, this is exactly what we want. And then short pause, and then they said, do you know what? It's a bit strong, isn't it? And that's my point. That's the frustration. That thought leadership, if you really want it, it means you've got to have a strong point of view, and you've got to present it and stand by it. And they were saying, oh, well, you see, the people that we're trying to get this message out to, we're a bit worried because we've never really had this stand before and we don't want to offend them. And because basically they're saying, this is the problem, we can fix it, this is the problem you have. Well, that's their business, fixing that problem, and here's the solution. So that was frustrating. So obviously we've got to help them to get their messaging out. We're not deaf to the idea that, you know, they have to use language and so forth in a way that's not going to alienate their audience. That's what we do. But it is an interesting idea about thought leadership.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you should outsource it, but anyway, that's another point. Alex, do you have something you would like to add?
Yeah, I think I may have jumped the gun a bit earlier. But I mean, I think generally speaking, I guess a frustration I have with the industry is you know, as marketers, our education and I guess the way we have been trained for a long time, and growing up in classical advertising agencies, everything was about, you know, the one thing, the proposition that you wanted to communicate about the product, and ram home over and over again to make sure that people know what your brand stands for and consistently saying that same message. Mm-hmm. From our point of view, I think, you know, the process we try and take our clients on, and we still get lots of those briefs, by the way, and it's hard, but I mean, the journey that we try and take our clients on is stop going, what do we want to say about ourselves, and start going, who are we trying to communicate to? What are they interested in? What do they listen to? What do they watch? What are they interested in? What's happening in culture in the spaces that they want to play? And trying to marry, you know, what the brand stands for with a genuine space it can own in culture, and actually thinking about what an audience wants and can entertain and can drive them is the process we try and take our clients on. And I think, you know, for every industry in its infancy and even those that are mature, that's still a conversation we continue to have all the time.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add to that, that I completely agree, and I think what value can that brand give to that audience? Like, what are you actually giving back? And really being authentic, like, do you have, should you be playing in that space? Just because you want to doesn't mean you should, and doesn't mean your brand can. But, you know, we can definitely work with brands to sort of help them and be that chaperone into that space, but it has to be authentic, and you have to be adding value, actual value, not what you perceive as value.
And it's such common sense, right? But how many people actually get it? This is what we want to say. Yeah, but what does your audience want to hear? And it's so basic, but the majority of people miss it. And I don't understand how they can't see it. So
we actually have a thing for our team creating the content. The first thing they have to ask themselves as well is like, would I read this and would I share this? Would I be proud to share this?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then they're not on the right mark.
Yeah. All right, so we've got obviously a bit of an elephant in the content marketing room in the last couple of weeks. King content is dead. Content marketing is dead, apparently, according to the media frenzy that surrounded it. Is it dead? Why does that keep happening? Why do we keep reading these articles with these headlines that just...
I think content marketing is still massively evolving as a business model, and I think when it comes to King content, as with a lot of other businesses in the industry, they are driven by fast growth and revenue bottom dollar. So they're working on content marketing models that are focused on low value and high quantity, for example. Content at its core, I think, is still a very human business, and it's not something that can be automated or scaled along that type of model. And as we were talking about before, it really goes back to focusing on value and authenticity. There was a great article in Mumbrella about this, and talking about, do people really want to hear more from brands? Do they really want to have those conversations with brands? Do they really want to be targeted with content from brands? And I think, yes, for me personally, I do. I don't want to hear from necessarily a mobile manufacturer about fashion and art, but I do want to hear from them about new technology, artificial intelligence, the places where they are really at the forefront of R&D, where they can give me some information that not only lets me know that they are at the forefront of that R&D, but that gives me something really actionable and valuable that helps me to learn, helps me to be ahead in those topic areas where we know they have the advantage, where they're spending a lot of money learning themselves and passing that value on to their customers. Not just about positioning, but what can they really give me back that's interesting and valuable. And I think at BBC, our audience and our voice is all about truth and value, and that's where we see, just the same as in news publishing, just the same for our readers, where they want to hear from us on the topics that we know a lot about or that our reporters go out and investigate. They want to hear from brands where they have real and true value or making real investment themselves. I think it's still really important in focusing on that true message as opposed to volume of output and targeting people all the time. It's targeting people where they really want to hear from you that will continue to make content marketing a success.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I agree on that point. I think, without speaking ill of the dead, I think King content was somewhat built for the early phases of the content marketing world, where it was about hitting a lot of content to really grow SEO. And I think, I think there's a few evolutions that the market's going through that are very much audience first. I think, to Nicola's point, I think there's much more of an emphasis now on quality of content over quantity. And I think there's a real mantra of less is more, make an impact and make something that means something in the content space. And then I think there's a realization for brands that it's very difficult to go from an audience of 0 to being a successful content marketer overnight. It takes time to build an audience, to build credibility in a space. And I think a lot of the reason why brands like BBC, BuzzFeed, Vice have been successful is we provide, I guess, a built-in audience and brand credibility to help bridge that gap and help brands get into that space as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Oh no, I was just going to say that, I don't know the ins and outs of the acquisition or anything like that, but to say that, an entire industry has gone down the toilet because there was one sort of failed acquisition would be like saying, because Microsoft wrote off their Nokia acquisition that all, mobile phone manufacturing is done.
Yeah.
Which is clearly not the case. So I think, people can learn lessons from it, but I don't think you can tar an entire industry with that brush.
Absolutely. Well, I heard someone say the other day, I don't know if I should say their name, they might not want to be associated with the public statement, that it was a failure of business integration, and to me that kind of makes a bit more sense than anything else. Let's move on to measurement, because I know it's a really big part of what people want to talk about with content marketing. And I think part of the confusion comes with measurement around what you measure. And obviously sales, right? At the end of the day, that matters, right? But there's a lot of other benefits that you can gain from being awesome at content marketing. Who wants to give some insight about measurement, what you measure, how you measure, what's important, maybe where clients are also getting it wrong, their expectations, the clicks versus, the real substance?
Oh, I was just going to say, I think, first of all, this idea that you can't publish 6 blogs on something and then expect the world to change. So it is this idea that you do need to invest some time, and you won't necessarily get results immediately because you do need to build something. And I'll give you a quick anecdotal example of that on the Brunswick Review. So Brunswick was pitching for a big bank in Australia. Brunswick doesn't have an office in Australia. There was a very strong incumbent, and they won the account. And when the partner that was leading that came back to New York, they came over to see me and said, the pitch went really well, but everyone was pitching hard. So they asked the head of comms at the company that they were pitching to why we got the business. And they said, well, blah, blah, blah. And they said, and we really liked the Brunswick Review. They said, we thought you don't have an office here, but the Brunswick Review speaks volumes about the kind of business you are, and we decided that the firm that we wanted to do our communications for us was a firm that had that kind of quality of a magazine, that we could see amazing stories and clear thinking and so forth. So they won an account because when it came to the crunch, everyone was pitching really well, and that won the job. And another example of that was where we did a great story about in public relations, there's always this idea that you want to say sorry, and then the legal team is saying, no, you can't say that, right? So think of any disaster. So we did this brilliant interview with one of our clients, actually, Pfizer, a big drug company. So we interviewed head of comms, head of legal. So head of comms, something goes wrong in a big drug company. It does happen, believe it or not. That's a joke. So something goes wrong. So comms instinct, stand up, say, terribly sorry. Legal say, you can't say that. Think of BP, another Brunswick client. Think of that tension. We want to say sorry and make it better. You've got to be kidding. We're going to be in the courts for years. So we did a story about that, and we had these 2 women, actually. And they said, actually, when something goes wrong in my world, the first person I go and see is that other person. So here's comms and legal talking to each other. And actually, they put people in each other's teams. Anyway, we ran this story. And then my chairman and CEO told me that there were a succession of readers of the magazine came up to them and said, oh, my God, that story, I just could bang those 2 departments' heads together because they don't talk to each other. And you ran a story not only showing that they talk to each other, they put people in each other's teams. I want to meet these women. I want to do that in our company. They thought these were not clients of Brunswick, but suddenly we were the people that had given them an idea. So that's a long burn idea, and it's where it's not something you can measure by clicks, but it's something that makes your company means something to your readers or your viewers or whatever.
You're building loyalty to the brand, right?
Yeah, and it translates into business.
Which is what content marketing ultimately does.
So that's measurement to me, but it's old school measurement. It's not old school measurement. It's not sort of something tangible.
There's the tangibles and the intangibles, right? Yeah.
I think for us, being purely in the digital space, we can measure pretty much anything, but really understanding what are the actual business objectives we're trying to solve for, and sort of really challenging clients on that as well, because a lot of the times, a client will say to us, we're interested in, brand awareness and things like that, but then they'll want to know what the click-through rate was. So it's kind of like really pushing back and saying, okay, understanding what are we trying to solve for together, what are the metrics that really matter to solve that problem, and really digging deep on those, but being really specific, because we can measure things like, we guarantee views on our content anyway, but we can measure how many people saw the content, how long they spent with it, how many people engaged, shared, all those kind of things, but really trying to define what is important, and what are those benchmarks, and what actually makes sense. Yeah. That's key.
Yeah.
I also think the industry being relatively new, the technology surrounding how we measure some of those longer term goals or sort of greater awareness impacts is also coming to the forefront. There's a lot of research into things like facial recognition technology, which we're doing some of at the BBC at the moment with a project called Science of Engagement that looks at where you're watching content and recognizing through microfacial movements what emotions the content is triggering and how hard it is triggering those emotions, and then looking at how those emotions play out as an impact on brand awareness. So everyone needs to be able to report ROI and give back, even if that is a long-term goal. Talking about where and how that is achieving value for a brand is still important no matter what. And I think it's up to us in the industry to really put the investment in there and focus on the right type of technologies that can help prove that ROI and give value back to people making decisions in brands. And I think these type of technologies are very, very interesting because at the core of things, we are all human, we are all emotional, and that is what is at the heart of storytelling.
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, I mean, I can second that. I was having a beer with my colleague from Mindshare last night, and he was talking about a company that he's been working with that measures biotech and physiological responses to content, which is how you're feeling, not just facial recognition, but going inside. But I mean, from our point of view, like I think, measurement's really important, and I think the industry can get really caught up on like whatever metrics Facebook and Google dictate sometimes. You're like, Facebook's doing video, quick. It's all about completion rates. And ever since Facebook started doing video, completion rates are terrible because of the thumb feed. So I think having the conversation about what objectives are and then designing a methodology to try and deliver on those, so you're lifting the conversation out of just number of views, view-through rates, and starting talking about brand awareness and business objectives is really key. So we're trying to work with Nielsen's, we're designing ethnographic panels with Kantar and other partners to really do that based around our clients' objectives as well. Because we need to help them show their bosses it works as well, right?
Yeah.
For me, it's slightly different. I think yes, my bosses are always chasing for everything. I think like our bosses, they want the reach, they want the engagement, they want everything all at one go. But at the same time, I feel that content marketing is not just about putting that piece of content up, it's also how do you weave that into all the rest of your other sales tools as well. Because like for me right now, they see, I think like a lot of other brands out there, content marketing, they see it as, hey, I just keep pushing out digital content. But I feel that content is also weaved into like at the shop front. How do you actually use your salespeople to actually talk a little bit more about your brand? Not just, hey, this is a t-shirt, go buy this because it's got fantastic technology. What does this technology help you to do? So those are, I think, metrics that you can't really measure directly, but I see that's actually how you take content to filter through your entire product flow chain.
Well, I don't know how you do it, but you've got my husband sucked into the Under Armour brand. We've got a house full of the stuff. So to me, there's another aspect to measurement that I think is missed, and that's the intangibles, which we were talking about. And so I've worked with and for Microsoft over nearly 2 decades. I'm getting old. And I remember being there when the DOJ case started in the 90s. And from that day, Microsoft couldn't control its story in the market, right? The media wouldn't give them a break. And it was negative. But when you're inside Microsoft, it's super passionate, right? The people, the employees. And when they launched Microsoft Stories, and it's called Story Labs now, they gained control of the story. I mean, they actually did get some incredible business results immediately from the stories. But they regained control of their public story, and now Microsoft is a darling again, right? And to me, like, how do you measure that? Well, I mean, the share price has never been higher. And I think it all goes back to that, and obviously controlling the story around Satya as well. And I think that, to me, that's another excellent example of how content can really sort of change the game. And somebody was talking about the story earlier, but I think there's a lot of different measurements, and it's not the clicks, and it's not in a B2B sense. It's just not. So the conclusions are focus, patience. It takes time. It's not noise for noise sakes, right? In the B2C space. What else? We can open up for some questions.
Well, I was just thinking, in New York, I got to know Thomas Kellner, who produces GE reports.
Yeah.
And I mean, interesting. I said, how do you see yourself? Because he's a former Forbes journalist producing GE reports. I don't know if you see it. It's a fantastic thing. And he said, I see myself as a journalist whose beat, some journalist beat might be accountancy or agriculture. His beat is GE. It's a massive company doing interesting things. And of course, there aren't enough journalists or media outlets to cover all the amazing things that GE do. They'll cover the newsy stuff, but there's a lot of other stuff that isn't quite going to make it. So they want to tell those stories, and that's the idea behind. And the way he put it is he was sort of brought in and then let loose. They brought him into GE, let him loose, and that's his beat. He goes out and tells stories about GE and just brings to light really fascinating stories about this incredible company that does amazing things. I mean, I just had a quick look at it this morning, and there's all this stuff about, think of digital printing, and you think of that really crude stuff that people gave you things, and you think, what's it, like an egg cup or something? Oh, thanks. They're like digitally printing teeth and all this sort of thing. And that's GE technology. So they make a little video about digitally printed teeth, which is using it doesn't mention GE, just at the end, GE. And that's, by association, a really cool thing with a video that you might share, and then it's associated with a really cool company, and that's job done for them.
And the interesting thing about GE is, like, if you look at what they sell jet engines or trains. I mean, big stuff, right? So the people who make those purchases, defence industry people, that sort of they're not reading GE reports, right? So when I asked them, so who reads it? It's the mamas and the papas that are investing in GE. That's who it's targeted for. And so that's a different type of ROI, right? So as an investment opportunity, if it keeps going up, the share price is going up, obviously that's part of the solution, but you couldn't necessarily directly measure it, right? Anyway, we've got 5 minutes, because of course we're content marketing people, we're going to talk a lot. Come on, give us some questions. Wow. Do you want to go first?
Hi, my name is Ashwin Chandra. I'm from Indash. We're Asia's biggest influencers marketing platform. I'm a big advocate of content marketing, just like you. I can see that there's a shift. Instead of content marketing just being PR related, it's becoming more and more commercialized. The question that I have a lot with my clients, that I got a lot from my clients, and I'm really curious how you drive this conversation, is the following. They say we see the added value of content marketing, we see how it's bringing value to our readers, to our viewers, but where's my specific ROI? I see that you can bring awareness, I can see that you bring engagement, but what about conversion? What about hard sales? For every dollar I spent on content marketing, how much money can you give me back? And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about how you drive this conversation.
Who wants to have a go?
So I think this goes back to my sort of earlier point around the fact that content marketing isn't a one-fits-all solution. And I think looking at how you activate around that content marketing, as to the Under Armour example of taking a message that you're putting out through content marketing and pushing that down through your salespeople, so they're there at the point of purchase to remind people about that message and make it actionable, taking responsibility for saying, okay, this is one part of our marketing funnel, it might be right at the top, how do we utilize this amazing awareness and value that we're creating with other activations to drive things down to conversion, and not expect that you're just going to put a video out there and all of a sudden people are going to walk in your store and buy something.
B2B or B2C? Yeah, so
Even for both, I think.
Yvonne, no, but I'm thinking Yvonne should probably have a go at this one.
No, I mean, I agree. It is, I can't, there isn't a direct, if you ask me for the amount of investment that we put, no, I don't drive, I can't say for every $1,000 I drive more t-shirts or I drive X amount. I don't think you can actually directly correlate it, but it's something that you got to kind of build over time. There are a lot of other metrics, I think, within marketing itself that can help drive sales, but you can't literally take content marketing and say it has to drive X amount of dollars.
I would just also say that, just checking what are their actual objectives, and going back to that, and if it is, generating sales, is content marketing the best avenue? It might be. And we've worked with, so Tasty is a big food brand we've created, and we worked with Mondelez with their Ritz, and we knew that we did a Tasty campaign, and for every dollar they spent, they saw $1.20 come back in terms of sales because we did a DLX study. So you can measure it, but we've also walked away from a lot of campaigns because we didn't feel that we would be the best fit for that client in delivering that outcome. So really understanding what are they trying to achieve, and being true to if you can actually affect that success, and if not, then probably recommending someone else.
Go and check out American Express's Open for Business, their content portal. It's targeted at SMEs, and it's the biggest single driver of revenue to the business. So there's plenty of examples where it works, and it's about being focused, it's about being relevant, and it's about being useful to someone and building their loyalty over time, and eventually they buy from you, and you've got to be patient. Neil?
Neil Moore. I'm formerly next to you, Jackie. One question I never got quite right with clients is thank you. That didn't go anywhere. So I'd just like to know how people up there, and including from the client, please, how you've dealt with that situation. If it's not the client's obligation to know what they're marketing for, I really don't know how we can help them.
I think you
I'd
answered
like to
your
hear
own
from
question.
everybody.
Did that happen often?
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the problem is they don't know what they want to measure,
Yeah.
which is, and also they don't leave space for things that the benefits they don't even know they're going to get by committing as well.
I mean, if they tell you what they want, and I love what David said. He said sometimes it's not right, and we can say no.
Yeah.
But if they don't know, they're demanding ROI. But I'm saying, but are you looking for conversions? Are you trying to drive data, sign up subscriptions?
Yeah.
What are you trying to achieve?
Yeah.
And the number of times the answer to that question is, well, what can you give us?
Yeah.
So I just want to know if there is any. It might just be a conversational technique. It might be a question that you ask, or a survey you make them fill in to get the answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to dig deeper, because if they don't know, then I don't see how you could ever be successful, like at the end of a campaign, right? So I can give a lot of metrics back, but only they know the ROI. So I think, yeah, you just have to keep digging and understanding, like challenging them around, what does value look like to them? What does success look like to them? How will they be proud of this campaign if,
Not campaign, because we
Sorry.
don't do campaigns.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a long-term campaign.
But then you wouldn't see the end to end, right? You only see your piece and the results of your piece, right? So it is that internal awareness, and the challenge I always notice is, that there's all these pieces, but they're not brought together. And so, a lot of what I'm doing is about employee advocacy. So I'm getting hundreds of employees being social leaders, right? But I can't even measure what they're doing, because I can't say their data on LinkedIn. Nobody can see their data on LinkedIn, only they can see it. So I don't think there is a holistic measurement tool for content marketing that goes right across the business that brings all of the pieces together to give that complete understanding. I think we need somebody to invent that technology, but it's not there yet.
Though I do use a questionnaire and survey to help get those answers out of clients. I'm not going to lie, it's not a bad idea every time. I think it's also part of our responsibility to help educate around the types of questions that clients should be asking themselves and what we should be measuring, how we're doing it, being from the content side and the storytelling side. So we do, in fact, have a questionnaire that our sales team go out with when they're investigating these types of things for content.
Yeah.
And there's a big difference between big companies where the CEOs got an idea, a vision for this company, and it trickles down through that company, and it's communicated, and they have town halls with their employees, and they get interviewed by newspapers, and people even quite low down in the company have some idea of what the company stands for and what they're trying to achieve and so forth. And then you contrast that with a company where an agency like ours might be called in, and they say, well, we want to do some content marketing. You say, great, and what do you have in mind? They say, well, yeah, we want 10 articles a month. And you say, great. And then you start asking those questions, and you say, so I just do all the usual journalistic stuff. It's ever so easy. So you just sort of say, well, who do you want to speak? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? And they're sort of, well, I don't know. We just want some articles. Couldn't you? That's what you do, right? I say, yeah, but what does success look like? What do you want? And who's your audience? What do you mean? Well, who's going to read it? Is it going to go to the public? Is it going to be is your employees going to send it out? Are your salespeople going to use this? Oh, I don't really know. But just 10 articles. Like, go away and do me 10 articles. Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe we can send that message back up. But it's a pity. And with a bit of digging, we'll do our best shot. But rather than me guess it or have to tease it out and get it wrong, it really would help. If
they thought about it in the first place, right?
If they think, but we can just ask the right questions, I think, to try to make people think in that way, because that information can really help us to do a good job.
Absolutely. Shoes of the customer, that's what it's all about. All right, we're out of time. We could have probably obviously gone for a lot longer, but thank you very much. And thank you guys, you've been awesome. Thank you.